Hello everybody, welcome to tonight's Positive Living. It's our second last live. I can't believe we've got here, counting down to World Menopause Day, which is a week on Sunday. So if you haven't got your Know Your Menopause poster, please go to pausitivity.co.uk, get a plug in. My name's Elizabeth, I'm here with Claire, and we are the Pausitivity poster girls. As we said, we're behind all this. And tonight, we're going to talk about sex, baby. I've been really looking forward to this one. We have Kimberley, who is going to be telling us about how to improve our sex through, well, not just our sex lives, sorry. How to improve our sex lives through natural methods. So I shall hand you over to...
Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I really appreciate you taking an hour out. So basically what I wanted to do, because I'm an acupuncturist and I work predominantly in women's health, so I talk a lot about intimacy and connection and libido as well within my clinical practice. But what I wanted to discuss with you is a few really useful, helpful tips that I feel like are incredibly supportive and very nurturing. Basically a new idea and mindset around how we frame sex. Kind of moving forward, as everything changes going through menopause. You can't just say, you know, things are going to carry on as they are and hope that they will continue to be like that. Everything changes. So we're going to just explore that a little bit today. I want to be really super duper clear kind of moving forwards. This is such a huge subject and it has so many variables. So this isn't an opportunity to really go into everything, but I do just kind of want to pick up on a few key bits and pieces that I hope will be really relevant to you. And if not, if there's anything else that you kind of want to discuss and go forward with, then we can perhaps discuss it after. But I hope you also find it very interesting. So yeah, there's so many variables when it comes to sex and libido, from things like female sexual dysfunction, trauma, there's even male factor. Obviously, when you look at things like patriarchy and societal norms, social media and mental health as well. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's really, really complex. And what turns you on and turns you off is so unique as well. Personal and, you know, what I really hope you get out of it today is just a few simple tools that will help you kind of switch up your libido and your sex life as much as possible anyway, and even just a little bit, even if you just take something from it, and also I want you to have the strength to own this unique sexuality, this change and shift in sexuality as well. So this isn't really just about menopause, it's about who we are and how we choose to show up in life, what I like to call our kind of sexual esteem, or sexual self-esteem. Plus I really want to start kind of getting intimate with your anatomy and hormones. So yes, we are going to get a little bit, some of you might feel a little bit, oh, not so sure about that and stuff, but we're going to get into it, so be prepared. Just so you know what's changing through the menopause and how you can help yourself as well. And I really want to explore the nitty-gritty of kind of how that's possible despite this hormonal roller coaster that they've politely named the menopause, or what I would more accurately describe as almighty shitstorm for most people. And it's really my belief that this could be ultimately a sexual revolution. But it requires a change in mindset and a core of foundation and knowledge. So I just want to spend a moment just delving into kind of those key sex hormones that contribute towards libido, so you know exactly how to recognize if and when they've come out of balance. This is what we define as sexual esteem. So how you view your sense of self as a sexual being. And that might be really uncomfortable for a lot of people to sit with, you considering yourself sexual. But by the end of this, I really hope that you will, and that kind of sexual esteem and that confidence will kind of have budded a little bit after this talk. But first, kind of let's talk about hormones. And as we know, hormones don't work independently, they're all intertwined, which is why no two menopauses, no two menopausal transitions are the same. So let's explore that in a little more detail and just give you the tools and techniques to troubleshoot these hormones as and when they arrive. What I really want to do is kind of just dip into a couple of the key ones that I believe will be causing the biggest issues for you right now. So estrogen, we've all heard of it. We all know that it declines with menopause and it causes a whole host of other problems. So we'll just be dipping into that just now. And how that obviously, how libido is impacted because of that dip in estrogen. So for a small number of lucky ladies, their libido soars, but for most others, they are burdened with what they call vaginal atrophy. And if you don't know what that is, it's when your vaginal walls become much like crepe paper. It's the thinning and drying and inflammation of the vaginal walls that may that it's due to this drop in estrogen that can often cause a lot of pain with sex. So you might have been to the doctor about it, they might have told you a little bit about it, or you might just be at the beginning of your journey and not really understanding what's going on and why it is becoming more painful. And as I said, this is due to that drop in estrogen, and it's absolutely normal. It happens to every single woman. There isn't a single woman that can't escape this this drop in estrogen. It just affects us all very differently. So for some, this might be a real issue. For others, it might not be so significant, but it does happen to us all. So in normal conditions, the vaginal wall is elastic in this thick, kind of juicy lining, and it's ridged and lubricated. But with vaginal atrophy, the vaginal walls actually shrink, and it's that when that lining becomes very pale and smooth and dry. And this is what we would consider kind of symptomatic of this estrogen deficiency. And it's something that women go through, that going through menopause do really struggle with, obviously along with a whole host of other symptoms that are associated with a drop in estrogen, like hot sweats, palpitations, sleeplessness, and estrogen can also impact our feel-good hormones like dopamine and serotonin as well, causing things like low moods and lack of motivation, lack of arousal because of that as well. So none of this is looking overly sexy right now. Yeah, it is entirely normal. So you're definitely not alone. And if this picture of hormonal health is something that really resonates with you, so this is this is a poor lady suffering with a drop in estrogen, bless her. So yeah, if this is something that resonates with you, then I propose a solution. Let me just say, this is all you can see all the different types of hormones and how they're impacted as you're going through menopause. There's constant ebb and flow, causing absolute, what I like to call menopausal mayhem. So my proposition for you is to redefine sex. So sex is not defined as solely penetration. And it's so ingrained in us that that's what sex is. So to put it simply, now we know that sex just simply isn't penetration, we can mix it up. And this is an opportunity to actually explore the body and find alternative ways to add a little fizz into your sex life again. So a couple of little statistics here. Only 6% of women said that they always orgasm through physical penetration. So very, very minute number of women in the grand scheme of things. 37%, so nearly 40% of women need clitoral stimulation to orgasm. And anywhere between 10 and 40% of women report having difficulty or even an inability to reach orgasm at all. So just here, it's just kind of exploring that kind of picture that everyone is different, basically, but it's all right to kind of get down and dirty with these different ways and beings of what sex actually is and how we can actually orgasm from it. I'd like to propose that the menopause is a sexual revolution, and it's actually a great time to reclaim that real feminine sexuality and your sexual esteem, and get really intimate with yourself and what you want. And with age, we know, comes confidence. So this is the prime opportunity to be able to do that as well. So let's just talk anatomy for a moment. So this is a really beautiful picture here about anatomy, but you might be surprised to see this picture, which is actually the clitoris, which you would never ever know really unless you looked into it a little bit more. If we what I really want to do is explore the clitoris, and because I feel like this is the best opportunity for us to redefine that word sex and move forward from that. And I want to explore why that is. I believe it could be superior to the vagina when it comes to things like sex and orgasm. So that when you're next having a dry day, or your partner edges over and gives you that coy little expectant look, you can tell him or her all the magic of the clitoris and why penetration is definitely off the cards. So a few little clitoris facts. The clitoris has about 8,000 sensitive nerve endings, which are actually double the amount of the penis. So actually I feel like women are really squids in there for sure. We've definitely come out better than men in that respect. And it doesn't stop there. Actually, the sensations started in the clitoris can spread across the whole pelvic area, affecting 15,000 other nerve endings. And as only a quarter of the clitoris is actually outside of the body. And you can see that here, only this little tip, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but only this little tip is outside the body. The rest, this huge area just here, is inside. And so you can imagine the reverberations from an orgasm because of that. Also, there's a really, really beautiful fact as well that you might like to know, and which is another reason why I believe that menopause can be a sexual revolution, is that it grows. Little did you know, it grows throughout your lifetime as well. So in puberty, the clitoris starts to increase in size. They say it kind of gets to around about 1.8 times larger by the end of puberty, but it grows even up to and after menopause as well, as much as 7 times the size it was at birth, which is pretty significant, albeit it is a tiny little thing. But my theory therefore is that bigger means better orgasms. So actually you're in a great position if you're kind of edging on or past menopause, I believe. And not only that, but orgasms have multiple potential health benefits too, due to the hormones and other chemicals that are kind of released during the body during that time. So study shows that orgasming once a week is associated with a higher level of IgAs, that's immunoglobulin antibodies, which are those immunity kind of, you'll have heard it loads recently, but those immunity antibodies that we need to keep us fit, strong and healthy. And I believe this is really super pertinent right now. So I'm all of the belief that we should sack off the social distancing and just get a little bit more intimate and add a little bit more fizz into our lives to keep us strong, fit and healthy instead. And this idea that pleasurable sex is also can also improve your mood and relieve stress, as we know, as it releases that surge of endorphins. And these endorphins are the same ones that you get through things like exercise and obviously acupuncture. I'm saying that because obviously I'm an Acu wizard. But yeah, a great sense of endorphins as well, which can be also great pain relief, not just stress or mood lifting. And so for that instant free endorphin hit, I suggest getting just a little intimate with yourself or your partner. And if these wonderful health benefits aren't quite enough to convince you that orgasms will completely change your life, menopause or not, as I said, this is a sexual revolution, ladies. They can actually increase your libido too. So they've proven that the more you have, the more you want. So if you're feeling a little low in libido and you just need a little bit of edging into you know, a little greater stimulus, then again, it's just a little bit more sluggish as you get older. But the more, as you say, the more you have, the more you want. You can see here, this is the clitoris and this is the penis gland, obviously. So you can see the similarities between the two. I just love the kind of the similarity, but no, bigger isn't better, because the clitoris is smaller but far more powerful. I'm just going to move on now. So obviously that's how we can work with things when to work around the issue of this vaginal atrophy and pain and that kind of dip in estrogen. But what else can we do to make sex more comfortable for penetration and a little bit more enjoyable? So other things you might want to think about are adding phytoestrogens into your diet, increasing blood flow to the pelvis. As we know, kind of that lack of estrogen means a lack of blood flow to the vulva and vagina, and some menopause-friendly lubrication as well. And if you're really, really struggling, then I recommend going to the doctors and talking to them about getting an estrogen cream, as it can also be really, really effective if you're really struggling with discomfort. So ways to increase blood flow to the pelvis. Well, I obviously, AccuWizard, would always recommend acupuncture. Acupuncture can be beneficial for modulating hormones and increasing blood flow to help aid in relieving dryness and pain. And I'd also highly recommend yoga, as again, that just helps move blood flow through the pelvis. So even just consider a short 20, 30 minute kind of yoga stretch just before intimacy. Even with your partner, if you choose, as it can just help get blood flow going. You'll also want to consider personal care products and underwear, as these can contribute towards that dryness and discomfort too. So it's in with the cotton knickers and the natural fibers like bamboo, and out with the perfumed and chemical laden body washes. And you'll have heard it all before, but it's just reminding yourself about it as well. And just so you know as well, your vagina is self-cleaning, so it doesn't need sprays, it doesn't need wipes, and it doesn't need washing. So yeah, you don't need any of those kind of heavy perfume products. And if you try all of these things and pain's still an issue, consider a pelvic examination to test your pelvic floor, things like, check for things like lichen sclerosis and endometriosis, yeast infections, and things like pelvic infections, STIs, as just because you're perimenopausal, menopausal, it doesn't make you immune from getting chlamydia. So there is apparently a big surge in chlamydia in 58 women age 50 plus. So there you go. And that can also cause pelvic pain. But the biggest thing that is going to transform your sex life and create a little extra fizz is communication and honesty. And that's with yourself and your partner. So whether you're at the beginning of your menopause journey or you're just out the other end, things change so dramatically and so quickly. And your comfort and desires will too. They'll shift naturally. And your partner deserves a little feedback that what they're doing is hitting the spot. So feedback before, during, and after. And as I said, constantly, because things will change so quickly. So that's all to do with estrogen and pain and how you can make sex a little bit more comfortable and enjoyable. But what happens when your libido is rock bottom? And there's a whole host of other issues here that can contribute towards this. But I really want to delve into one of the biggest and most pertinent things right now, and that's obviously stress. This isn't just an internal self-stress, it's like global stress. So I just want to introduce the stress hormones, and that's cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. And what happens when you have high stress hormones, you can obviously see here, it's really hard to get in the mood when you're in fight and flight if your stress hormones are really high, and you'll have lots of inflammatory things going on as well. And low stress hormones, when things just feel really flat, obviously you'll be really tired and not in the mood, and can cause loads of thyroid issues as well. So why is this worse right now? Obviously, because we're constantly being told that we're under this threat with COVID. So our brain is wired to live in this fight and flight mode, and that's completely shifting our libido. And that's not menopause specific. As I said, this isn't necessarily about menopause, it's about women in general. I use So yeah, I use libido as a gauge as well, for that true vital energy in clinic. It's like that cherry on top of the icing. It's not the foundations of the cake that we need for essential living and survival, but it's that cherry. So as soon as if you can't even meet your basic needs living at the moment, and that creating those foundation blocks of that cake, then you're never going to have that cherry, and that libido is never going to be there. So obviously during a global pandemic, increasing sexual pleasure is likely to be low on the list of essentials, way underneath scrambling to meet one's basic needs for survival. And here's a little insight for you. In a poll in America, a poll of 9,000 people, 24 people said that coronavirus had a positive impact on their sex lives, but 47 people said it's had a negative impact on their sex lives. So it's quite a significant amount of people. And so again, you're not alone in this. And again, context is key here. We're in the midst of this pandemic. So regardless of what's happening with natural cyclical rhythms with the menopause, you're in the epicenter of this unique global threat. So it's no wonder that your libido may have gone from 100 to absolute rock bottom 0. So just be kind to yourself with that, as we're all going through it. Other factors causing low libido, what I'd like to ask you to think about is the second most commonly prescribed drug after HRT for menopausal women, and that's antidepressants, or what otherwise known as SSRIs. And they can create a huge drop in your libido too. As they dampen down your moods, they also inhibit your sexual excitation system, so that thing that gets you going, basically. And SSRI derivative, there's lots of SSRI derivatives as well, things like migraine medications like tramadol. So again, just be aware that it's not always hormonal related. It's sometimes other things that you're putting into your body that are creating that drop in libido too. As I say, it's a little bit more complex than just taking HRT. So everyone always thinks, or all my patients always think, that as soon as they go on HRT, their libido is going to soar and they'll be absolutely fine, they'll be back on it, blah, blah. It's definitely not the case. It's so much more complex than that. HRT obviously boosting your estrogen where possible. And after breaking down the key hormones as we've kind of just have done, and how they impact libido, it's clear that there are a whole host of other reasons that can cause that low sex drive. Context, of course, is one of them. Sexual dysfunction, so low estrogen, vaginal atrophy and pain, and even a lack of desire towards your partner, a lack of self-confidence, certain medications, as I said, SSRIs, and most importantly, chronic stress, which is why tackling these things can take a little time, a little patience. So just be kind to yourself, as I said. We've already looked at how to address some of these key issues affecting sex drive. I want to keep this really simple for you, just so you've got these kind of take-home things to help increase your libido and optimize pleasure through the menopause. So first one is obviously communication with your partner to redefine what sex and pleasure means to you. Sex doesn't have to be penetration, so get imaginative. Or if you want to experiment in new forms of pleasure for yourself, then I recommend an app called Dipsia. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, and a website called Beducated. And both of those will definitely help increase your sexual esteem. Obviously, context is key. So when we're going through these ebbs and flows of stress and worries and fears in life, that can make it feel like an absolute Herculean effort to simply get aroused. So context is incredibly important. Let go of that kind of expectation in yourself that says you need to perform, to be that 20-odd estrogen surging woman free of all responsibilities, as you are now a 40-plus woman with a full-time job, 2 kids, an endless to-do list, and a pandemic. So I feel, as I said, context is key. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with you, but things change, including your hormones. It's just a matter of identifying the issues and having the tools to address it. So yeah, there are a few other things that I would recommend, but one of the biggest is blood flow, as I mentioned to you before. So acupuncture and things like yoga are fantastic. And also this is a really good one for a lot of people, and what you would never really understand, but obviously the whole body is connected. But if you typically hold a lot of stress in your like neck and shoulders and all of that sort of stuff, there's absolutely no way. It creates a whole block in the upper neck back area, and blood flow can't actually get down. And so what we're trying to do is make sure, again, stress levels are addressed, but blood flow is addressed as well. So making sure that all this tension is eked out, so everything starts to flow and operate in balance. Just as a side note, sleep as well is incredibly important, as rest and repair occurs during sleep, and it's also when your key sex hormones are made, including testosterone, so think libido there. So always make sure you have some good sleep hygiene. So just finally, what I really want you to take away from today is redefining what sex means to you, recognizing that it's all about context, that these hormonal fluxes don't have to mean the end of your sex life, and stress, fear, and survival, how they can negatively impact hormones. And as a final note, we've not gone into it here, but always test. We're all so unique, none of us are the same, so don't guess when it comes to these things about hormonal imbalances. Everyone's like, oh, is there one magic pill for libido? Is there one magic pill for getting things back on track? There absolutely isn't. So don't expect that from anyone, any practitioner that you go to, because they would be lying. You're all so unique. You need to test to understand specifically what's going on, and then create a unique treatment plan around that. And that includes nutrition, supplements, and anything else you kind of got going on. Am I back? No.
You're back.
Yeah, I'm back.
You're back.
No?
Thank you. Yeah. Am I the only one who thinks the penis and the clitoris drawings look like something that could be out of It's a Knockout? I'm just imagining Stuart Hall giggling away crazily as, you know, France and Belgium go knocking it out with little clitoris.
Potentially, but I know which one would win. For sure.
I quite liked it that an orgasm is a cure for COVID.
Yeah, I believe it's a true, genuine fact. Take it from me. This is what they'll be reciting when they do their announcements on Monday.
You just see Boris standing up for that.
I can only imagine what he would be saying. That's brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Have you got any questions, Liz?
Yes. What would be your advice as the best way to just start communicating with your partner about this? Because it's very difficult.
So I'm by no means a talk therapist. So I couldn't say, obviously, for sure how, and obviously your unique relationship is how you communicate with them on a day-to-day is obviously going to be very different. But I would just broach the subject of pain and discomfort, because they need to know. They're not, as much as we'd like to think that they're mind readers, they absolutely aren't. And we have to communicate effectively with them that there are certain things that perhaps becoming more and more uncomfortable as time goes on, and that throughout, kind of, it's not just before, but throughout, they need our feedback as well. That might, for some people, that might feel like quite vulnerable if you haven't done that. If you haven't had that experience before where you have been that open and honest with your partner, but it's essential kind of moving forwards, kind of to make sure that you optimize both of your pleasures moving forward. And what I would suggest there, obviously, if you don't know, because as I said, things do change so quickly. And again, not just menopause, but with stress and everything that people are going going through at the minute. Things are changing so rapidly with how we're feeling in ourselves and our bodies, is self-exploration. And that is, then we get really clued up and really intimate with what we need and what we want, so we can better educate our partners in that as well.
Cool.
That's what I suggest.
And also, how does acupuncture work exactly? I mean, are we talking about getting needles stuck in your clitoris?
No, absolutely not. So acupuncture is obviously all about blood flow. It's also all about, kind of, as I said, modulating those key sex hormones, and switching on, switching off certain parts of the brain. So by no means can we say that acupuncture stimulates libido, but we can mitigate those factors that are putting a little kind of a little hindrance on it, like the stress response, and like low estrogen. Again, we can increase blood flow to the kind of to the ovaries, to the uterus, to be able to work with that a little better. So yeah, that's what we can do.
Okay. I also have Shirley Valentine in my head with Lady Clitoris, which I just loved constantly. And so Kimberley's now looking, because she's far too young to understand that reference. But yes, I love it when she says she didn't understand, she didn't know how to pronounce it, so she thought it was clitoris, and it could be somebody's name. So I like that. Jackie, you have your hand raised. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hi. So, sorry, I'm cooking the dinner at the same time, but so I like the expression sexual self-esteem. I hadn't heard that before, but I think that's a really good expression. And my experience is that diminishes a little bit, or it has for me anyway, in terms of the menopause. And I've also got a condition called lichen sclerosis, which seems to have come about following sort of, well, whilst I was menopausal. So, and for me, I'm single and in the dating game, and it just is talking to partners or talking to people who might be potential partners. It's quite difficult because you're not already that intimate, or you're, you know, it's just a bit of a different sort of conversation to one that you might be having with somebody that you've already got a loving relationship with, and one of some long-standing. So I'm not expecting an answer, but it's just a sort of reflection on, it is a really tricky thing to talk about, I think, with partners.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And particularly when you've got that condition as well, it's a lot more extreme and severe than just vaginal atrophy. So absolutely, it's going to be 100% in the dating game. But men they're simple souls, and they respond well to you telling them what to do and what turns you on and what turns you off. And if you are this strong, incredibly strong, beautiful woman that confidently knows her own body, it's a real, I would presume, or like to think, that they would respond well and be receptive to your to the kind of the communication that you raise with them about what you want at that stage and what works for you and what doesn't. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer with that, because all men are obviously very different. Some are going to be really tolerant, some are going to be really gentle and nurturing, and it's just finding those ones that are that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the other interesting thing, it's a bit like orgasm being the cure for COVID, is what I've read about lichen sclerosis. They also say you should try and have sex, because if it's a bit sort of like, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Mm. So it's a benefit, isn't it? Perhaps I should sell it. I need someone to have sex with me. It's good for my condition.
Absolutely, for sure.
Not sure I'd word that on a dating site.
I think you'd be inundated. I feel like that would be your problem more than anything else. But yeah, I think that absolutely. And if not a man, there's definitely ways that you can work with that with yourself, and just, as I said, explore what works for you and what doesn't, so that you're super, super clued up when that right man does come along. So.
Barbara, you had a question.
Yeah, so interestingly, so hi Kimberley, I read an article today actually about this very thing, and you mentioned on your slides about using menopause friendly lubrication. Just wondered exactly what you meant by that, because I was reading today about a lot of women who say they've used what would be considered standard, well-known lubrication, and actually it's given them quite a lot of infections and has upset their sort of pH levels. So I just wondered what you would consider to be menopause friendly lubrication.
Well, this is something that annoys me a lot in the commercial world, and also the kind of sexual health world, is that things like lubrication are mainly created and supported for male pleasure and satisfaction, and actually very little is thought or considered, or now more so, but not before, very little was considered about things like women's health and fertility, those types of things. Now there are more of those products as we're kind of moving, hopefully with female rising and revolution and in that particular area. But yeah, so I would discard any of those kind of off-the-shelf ones, because that it's not even menopause specific. They're not going to be good for you as a woman, full stop. So there are a couple of ones, they tend to be water-based ones. I always go for the natural ones. Definitely not coconut oil. Don't even try that, it's disaster. But there are ones that are really great. So things like silk. Have you heard of silk? Anyone heard of silk? No. Another one is yes. Yep. Okay, I'm seeing some nods, which is good. And another one of my absolute favorites is called Into the Wild, and that's wild spelt with a Y. It's got, I love branding. It's got great branding, but also it's full of loads of really natural, it feels like a bit of self-care also at the same time. So it's full of like loads of other natural ingredients. So I feel like you're doing yourself good as well as it being a useful product. So, but that's just lubrication. You can also get other things like vaginal moisturizers, which you wouldn't use obviously during sex, but they can be useful if vaginal atrophy is causing you problems at any other time. So someone asked, why is coconut oil bad? I can't remember the specifics, but if you try it, you'll know.
I don't know if anybody saw the Daily Mail story today about the women who no longer wanted sex with their husbands because of perimenopause. And what really got me in that story was it was just sort of accepted by the women that, oh, well, yeah, I've hit perimenopause, you know, it's not going to bother now. And none of them seemed to care. And I was like, I know your libido slips, but that doesn't mean you have to just give up. There's, you know, there are things you can do. There are methods you can try. And there are ways just to have some sort of intimacy with your partner. I find myself, menopause is such a lonely time anyway. If you can't have any sort of intimacy with your partner at all, even if it's just a cuddle in bed, then, you know, it's going to be even more difficult. So I think having your good sex life is important. Sex as in just having that nice cuddle, as I said, in bed if needs be.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, and that's what I was kind of alluding to when I said redefine sex. Obviously, we talked a lot about clitoral stimulation and that obviously being a great way around the vaginal atrophy. But sex doesn't have to be, if it's not resonating with you, sex doesn't have to be any of those things. It doesn't have to end in orgasm. That's not our end goal with sex. It can simply be about intimacy, and it can simply be that cuddle with our partner. That could be our new definition of sex. But it's just important that you communicate that and you're with your partner and that you're both on the same page.
I think a good one there would be to maybe redefine sex as intimacy, because there's so many different levels of intimacy, aren't there?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I like the way that Kim suggested that this is menopause is the opportunity for a sexual revolution. Come on, girls.
Yeah. Well, I feel like as well, you know, women, to do with that sexual esteem and that rising in revolution, because I feel like it's bubbling in us all. We have been taught as women that actually sexualizing ourselves in any way is so bad, and that actually anything that we do to draw unnecessary sexual attention or energy to ourselves can even be criminalized. So we've learned to become very small and very closed and not very expressive and quite shy. And you know, this is an opportunity for us to reclaim that power, because so much of our femininity comes from that as well. And so it's an opportunity for us to explore that as a new concept, that actually we can show up and own that sexuality now, and it doesn't have to be that typical sexualized perception that, you know, society would have you to believe, you know, is terrible and stuff. So yeah,
I wonder if that's why so many menopausal women say actually once they get past the menopause, sex and just life in general becomes better, because sex is no longer just about having babies as they were taught at school. You know, they've got the freedom to just enjoy it without worrying about pregnancy, without thinking this is my role in society is to have babies, so I can swing off the chandelier if I want.
Yeah, exactly. And an interesting thing was to do with you know, the difference with male and female sexual number of sexual partners as well. You know, we're labeled as sluts if we have a number of different sexual partners, and again at any age, but there is a huge amount of support and encouragement for men that have multiple sexual partners. So again, it's that kind of discrepancy in male female energies and how, but I feel like that's changing or can change. It just requires us to kind of learn about ourselves and learn about this new era of sexuality and showing up in a completely different way.
The one thing I've learned over these last weeks is there is an entire army of women who are changing the way we view menopause and changing the way we view womanhood anyway. So yeah, I think for the next generation, God, they're going to be having so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You hope so, wouldn't you?
I'd like to say thank you very much, Kimberley. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
And I hope I don't have nightmares about clitorises running after me tonight.